Please welcome Sir Kenneth Branagh, Richard Madden and Holliday Grainger.
Hi.
Well. Welcome.
A lovely crowd.
How are we all?
Very well, thank you. Very
Excellent.
Well.
Congratulations, first of all, on the huge opening in the States.
Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Thank you.
70 million, roughly?
Yes, apparently.
Not bad.
Yes,
yeah. Like you don't know the exact amount.
No, we won't be going in our pockets, but it's very, very nice. For me, the numbers just represent people going to see the movie, so that means lots of people. I don't know quite how many it equates to, but it feels like a lot of people, that would be.
Feels like a lot of people indeed. So whenever people hear the word Cinderella, I think they have an image in their heads already of what that is. How do you go about making it your own and turning it into a live-action movie and embellishing it?
Well, you start with the script, obviously, but alongside the script, you get this sort of anecdotal sense of what people might like from a Cinderella movie. One of the first things that people said to me when they knew I was doing it is Gus in? This is the question. People obsessed with Gus, and I realized after a while Gus had to be in. So then I went to Chris Weitz, who wrote the screenplay, and Gus was in. And in fact, there's a whole secret mice subplot in this. We wrote entire scenes for the mice. They're all scripted. They're voiced by actors, and then they're all scrunched up. So in the home entertainment release, maybe people can discover what the secret screenplay is. But it was all prepped. But it was really about trying to embrace the set pieces in the story that people, I think, really remember. I think people are very taken with the chase from the palace. They're very taken with the transformation scenes. The story, in a way, is about transformation in lots of ways. So I wanted to do all those cinematic moments that would see our mice transform to horses and pumpkins to coaches and things. But also at the center of it, see if we could just find a different kind of Cinderella and also understand a bit more about who she was and how she could be in the 21st century and how some of those other characters might flesh out a bit, like Kate Blanchett's stepmother. And so it was a combination of finding the spectacle and the things that people might want and also the things that a new version of the story would demand.
And indeed, Cinderella's stepsisters, which brings us to Holiday. Can you talk about your character and how you go about a modern interpretation of quote-unquote ugly sisters?
Well,
Not ugly.
Absolutely.
Horrendous.
Hence the quote-unquote.
Well, we were actually going to ugly them up slightly by, we were going to have fake teeth at some point, and we turned up not telling Ken that we were going to have them in at the camera test. I had these slightly goofy crossy over ones, and Sophie had a geeky gap in between hers. And after a sort of first 10 minutes of camera test, Ken was like, you know what, I don't think the teeth are necessary. And that was them done. But I did get to keep them, actually. So I do have these geeky fake teeth if ever they need to come unuseful.
Are they framed? Are they hanging on a wall? What are they doing right now?
They're probably in my attic.
Okay.
I'll have to get them down. Yeah. But yeah, it was great working with Ken. Even in the audition, I felt like it was sort of like I felt like I was going for an acting workshop with Kenneth Branagh. People will pay for that. Because we kind of really played with the idea of sort of different levels of comedy with the sisters. I kind of at first thought I was going to go in and play some kind of stoic, bitchy Lady Mary-esque character, and then sometimes she's ended up just being a complete giggly little girl. But the whole rehearsal process was really useful because we sat down, Ken and Sophie and I, and kind of just talked about the kind of the backstories and tried to find some sort of psychological realism in the characters to kind of understand their wickedness and their kind of place that in a sense of like reality, lack of self-confidence and bullying and all of that kind of mindset. So that when it came to being on set, I felt like Ken then gave us sort of carte blanche to play and be as big as possible because we knew that there was that kind of that realism rooted at the bottom of it.
And Richard, can you talk about the psychological realism needed to play a character who's known as Prince Charming?
Well, we just tried to make a young man out of him, really, and kind of first and foremost, just like Cinderella's a daughter, he's a son, and that's what we kind of focused on, really, was that relationship with his dad. These characters are so influenced by their parents, so we kind of worked to try and, bring out that sense of humour between the king and the prince, and that kind of just sense of humour is a great way into a character, and I got a lot from Derek and what he did with the part so wonderfully, and I could kind of feed off that. I just basically stole bits from Derek and stole bits from Ken, tried to piece a character together.
I believe Ken gave you a reading list, which seems pretty daunting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was kind of, Ken would kind of give me a book and say, I think the Prince would be reading that just now, if you want to take a look at it, and it's Marcus Aurelius' Meditations of Machiavelli's The Prince, and I'm going, I thought this was a Disney film. But actually, I think that's what's so great about Ken, that this could be Macbeth or Cinderella, and it's the same amount of detail and precision and thought that's gone into it. And actually, you know, I'm sure you're not gonna kind of look at my prince in this and think, oh well, he must be reading these wonderful books. But for me, it's a lot of other stuff in the head. It puts you in the mind frame of maybe where he's at and what he's thinking, so we can get into these scenes and be in a place that's real. I know what books he's reading. I know what he's been doing for the past few years.
And Ken, what about you? What books were you reading in preparation for this?
I was reading Hello magazine half the time. I think it was just anything that could wipe your mind. I do a lot of reading anyway, because the fact that I've just sort of returned to reading for pleasure. When you do something like this, you get so caught up in, you know, the various variations on this, the Perrault tale, the Grimm's tale, you know, other tales of Cinderella from other cultures. So you really get sort of mono-focused on that during that kind of period.
So Hello magazine.
Well, it's just you just want something to sort of, no offense to readers and lovers of Hello magazine, but you just wanted something to sort of chill out to. You know, I hasten to add, this wasn't an obsession, but an occasional way of relaxing.
Branagh cuts pages of Hello magazine out and sticks them on the walls of his office. Headline shocker. Should we take a look at a clip? This is the, I don't know if Ken, if you want to set this one up. This is Holliday's entrance in the film.
Yeah, it's where Cinderella having been told by her father that he has met somebody else, that for the first time this woman and her daughters arrive at Cinderella's house.
Let's take a look. That is already for me one of the great screen entrances. It's fantastic.
Well, she in a minute she turns into the most fabulous close-up, doesn't she? She's got a veil on, and she turns around, these piercing blue eyes and those cheekbones, and it's very very striking. Sandy's clothes, her entrance is great.
And Cate Blanchett was already on board when you came on, is that right? But you must have known immediately this is a face I can shoot.
Yeah, I just thought it was a great opportunity to work with a wonderful actress who was able to relish, a moment like that and just wear it with and own it with such style. But she's also very funny and very witty, as you might imagine, very cruel when it's required. But because we also try and give some sort of personal history to the characters, I think that she also is very personable and intimate, and she, without playing for sympathy, I think she reveals a little of why the stepmother may be as she is, and we also see her take some kind of wounds. There's a moment, without too much of a spoiler alert, we see her understand that the bond still between Ella's father and his deceased wife, Ella's deceased mother, is very strong, and you see the challenge a stepmom can have in a situation like this. It's not to excuse what she does, but Cate Blanchett makes that very subtle, so you get that kind of terrific ownership of a moment in the movie, plus you get a lot of human feeling and detail.
And Holliday, we see there almost immediately that you and Sophie McShera, right from the off, are just pricking away at Cinderella, right from the off. How cruel did you allow yourselves to be on set?
It was kind of hard actually, because Lily's so lovely. She has these such wide open, innocent eyes. I just felt like we were just this pack of wolves picking at her all the time. It's like, you just want to go, I'm sorry, Lily, I'm sorry. But I really enjoyed it actually. Oh my goodness. No, I think it was more the kind of the comedy meanness and bitchiness that I enjoyed. I feel like the sisters are, it's less about them trying to affect Cinderella and more about them trying and out-mean each other, and kind of, I think there's a sense that Cate Blanchett's stepmother is the kind of the leader of the pack, and they're kind of trying to follow in her example and kind of egg each other on to who can get the best mean gag in.
And Richard, I guess in a way, did you feel you were in a slightly different film? Because you're in a very, Kit's off on his own in his castle and he's pining for Cinderella.
I suppose I was in the kind of the male-dominated part of the film, really. But you know, this whole story is, although I was kind of detached from Cinderella a lot of the film, it's all about her. So in a way, there's a huge connection there, and you know how we shot things. I was kind of able to kind of see everyone and be around and be part of it. So you know, I definitely felt like I was in the same film as these guys, just maybe didn't get to see them often enough.
And in terms of rehearsal time, you mentioned it earlier on, the rehearsal period. I mean, getting that chemistry between yourself and Lily James as Ella must have been so important to you.
Yeah, of course. I think that was something that it comes from both being our first kind of big movie and playing characters that lots of people have got preconceptions about, and I think we kind of clung to each other at the start of the film. Went, all right, we're in this together, and I suppose that really helped our relationship from the beginning. But you know, I think she's just a wonderful actress, and Ken cast as well, I think, as a couple.
Can you talk about the search for Lily and where you found her?
Well, she came along, and Lucy Babin, our casting director, was the first person to meet her, and then I watched a tape that she'd made, and then I met with her, and then she read with me, and then she did a screen test, and I think we put Lily and Richard together, and it was a long process of getting to know her and seeing also whether she would have the kind of calm, the kind of be able to carry the responsibility of playing a character like that, and that was revealed because she remained very playful across that whole thing. So did everybody else who was involved in it. We tried to create an atmosphere where they continued to enjoy it, because enjoyment, the sense of fun, was really necessary in the movie. So it wasn't a good thing for everybody to get worked up about whether they got the part or not, even though it was understandable that they got a little anxious. But we then all of the guys were so committed to everything. But it was nice also, apropos of that chemistry thing, to, for instance, the very first scene that we shot was when the two meet in the forest, and it was our first day of shooting proper. And we, in a sense, had slightly kept Richard and Lily apart a bit in order so that we could see the relationship happening right there on camera. But also they bravely, and all the way through the film, rode their own horses, like they did their own dancing. And so if you're having that first meeting and you're a live animal, you know, you've got a great big ton of horsepower underneath you. We kept the cameras away, a distance away, and we were on long lenses, so we were closer on them, but we were physically far away, so that we were overhearing this conversation between two actors who literally galloped into that scene every time we did it. So every time that scene started, they were already adrenalized. Then they had the horses to control. The horses don't always do what you tell them. And so the beginnings of that relationship seemed to evolve in real time with genuine sort of volatility underneath it, because you never knew what the horse was going to do.
Did that work, Richard?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, just coming in, like Ken said, that adrenaline of charging in with these horses. And Lily had never ridden before we started the film, and she got good at it, but that horse was definitely going to take out the camera crew if I didn't stop it. So I've got to get in there and stop it, and that kind of adds a level of fear. And then, you know, you're trying to kind of control these beasts, and you know, very cleverly of Ken, that's kind of mirroring these two people controlling their feelings and not really knowing what's going to happen next, and then kind of slowly settling with each other. So it was a great way to start the film, because we had all that anxiety and energy to kind of rush into that scene with.
Okay. Well, we have a clip now of you and Lily, and this is slightly later in the film. But don't know, Ken, if you want to set this one up.
You'll just have to remind me again.
It's the dancing. Yeah.
Oh, so, no,
dancing,
I knew.
Yeah.
Did they go to a ball in this, don't they?
They do go to the ball. Yeah, there's a ball. They
Something
shall
about
go to the
dancing.
ball. I think.
Yeah, this is the very beginning of the ball where they meet. She, as you may know from the story, is late for the ball, but she gets there in time. Everybody's been waiting, and she doesn't know where he is to begin with. But this friend, she doesn't know he's the prince. This friend, Kit, does emerge, delighted to see her, and so they begin the first dance.
Let's take a look. Short and sweet. Now, was that more or less nerve-wracking than shooting on the horses?
Much more nerve-wracking.
I thought it might be, yeah.
And it's kind of hard. You've got kind of 600 actors and dancers around you, and an orchestra, and Derek Jacobi and Kenneth Branagh and Kate Blanchett's watching you, and I'm not a great dancer, so oh God, the pressure. But actually, kind of very much like the characters you know, once Cinderella appears at the top of the stairs, that's all I could see. And actually the lights did get dimmer and we came together and just kind of got lost in this dance together, which again just sweeps us up. And the choreographer, Rob Ashford, did an amazing job at making all these beats between these two characters throughout it, these slight touches of hands and eye contact and, you know, the first contact. And that kind of really made it feel like acting, and I could kind of forget about my feet for a minute.
Although it's true to say that across that whole sequence, we probably shot the ballroom sequence for a week. And every time we did the dance, we did the entire dance. That's the first 30 seconds of it. It goes on for 2.5 beautiful minutes. They did it from start to finish every time, in front of everybody, every time, and never messed up a move across the entire shooting of it. It was incredibly impressive and very beautiful and very touching.
Yeah. And Holiday, what was it like being part of that scene, watching this unfold?
Amazing.
As well.
Sophie and I had probably watched, we had that theme, the dance music in our heads for weeks, because we probably watched Lily and Richard rehearse that hundreds of times. But something about actually being there on the day, the first time we saw them do it for real, it was just, because we'd been watching. I mean, I remember seeing the ballroom when Ken showed it me, when it was just like literally pieces of paper and a pencil, kind of little mini model. And so we'd been gradually watching this ballroom come to life and gradually watching the costumes come to life. And then all of a sudden, first day of shooting, there's hundreds of extras on set. And we did the shot of Lily walking down the stairs and Ken just left it rolling. So it's just the first time that we actually saw the dance for real, was actually in the situation, in the ballroom, with everyone there, with everyone watching, with everyone genuinely on tenterhooks wanting to watch this dance for the first time, and it felt so magical. I think that kind of, like, by this point in the movie, every time I've watched it, I'm crying. Like, I literally, just as this Lily starts to walk
But you're
down
meant to be
the
willing
stairs.
them to fail. You want them to fail and fall over. And stay in character.
No, but it's just so beautiful. It is.
It's great. It is great. We have time for questions from you guys now. If you've anything to ask. Whoa, lots of hands. That never happens. Okay, there's a lady right there. First hand I saw shoot up, right in the back row. If you can keep your hand up so we can get the microphone around you. We've only got time for 47 questions, so see how it goes.
Hi, judging from the trailers, the locations look really beautiful. Did you have a favourite one to film in?
My favourite one was that first day in Black Park, was it? And it was this gorgeous wood by this amazing tree that looks like it's a prop. It's kind of hundreds and hundreds of years old tree in it, and it was a kind of stunning bit of beauty, and like the amazing set decoration team had put all these beautiful flowers everywhere, and it just looked like the kind of perfect place to meet someone and fall in love.
And a holiday?
The ballroom set, I think, was just stunning, and even the down to every little last detail. It was a beautiful place to spend a week.
And I love being in Cinderella's house, which we also built, because every time we were there, we had this whole menagerie of animals, which were very, very funny, characterful, you know, I was going to say people, but of course they're not people, they're animals. But they were very characterful, and so you got to know geese and goats and rabbits and people who don't do what you tell them when you're trying to shoot a film, but it made it very memorable.
46 more questions to go. Yes, please. Right here in the middle. You keep your hand up, please, and we'll get the microphone around to you.
Thank you all so much for being here. What was the greatest challenge in making the film for each one of you that you found, either in characters or in filming?
I think initially it's sort of, as an actor, you quite often, or you're used to so used to doing things by yourself, and focusing is kind of quite an internal process. But for the first time, I was having to be part of a double act, and Sophie and I had to kind of feed off each other a lot, which to begin with is quite difficult, because you have to have this level of awareness of what the other person is doing in the scene all the time, and to try and get kind of the same tone. But and so the first few days that we were working together, Ken really kind of was on me and Sophie to try and kind of speed run the dialogue and really kind of feed off each other's lines and get that kind of quick kind of frantic argument sense going on all the time. But then once we'd sort of got into it, Sophie's like just in, I think she's just got funny bones, and she's just got this sense of like comic banter in her normal life anyway. So it's just kind of, once we kind of got in the pace of it. It actually ended up being turned from being the hardest point initially to kind of the most enjoyable aspect.
I think Cinderella's such like a strong, brave, amazing woman, and I read the script, and I think my biggest challenge was trying to make a man that was worthy of her affections, trying to make a man that you're watching this film and going with Cinderella and you're so on her side, and to make a character that you want to see her with, because she's this amazing woman. So on a kind of general way, was trying to create a man that was worthy of falling in love with by her.
And Ken?
For me, I think it was probably just generally the tone, to try and find the tone that felt that the characters were modern and contemporary and believable and credible inside a world that was classical and took you on a sort of big escapist journey, and that the two things could live side by side, hopefully.
Next question, please. No, the lady behind today. Thank you.
Hi, I was lucky enough to see the film last night and it was beautiful.
Thank you.
I just wondered, not going to give any spoilers, but there was a scene with the Prince and the King. It was like quite emotional, and it was really nice to see that. Was it nice to explore the Prince in a less one-dimensional way than the cartoon?
Absolutely, that's like I said earlier, I consider him a son before anything, and Cinderella a daughter before anything, and so to build up that relationship with Derek was really great, because you get to see the Prince, in lots of different ways. You get to see him be a soldier and a friend and a prince, but also, most importantly, a son. And you have someone like Derek Jacobi to act with. It's not hard to tell the truth when you're looking into his eyes. He gives you so much.
Did you see the prince and his father as a way in to create emotion that otherwise might not have been in the main story?
Well, I think Rich is right in terms of we wanted to make a credible partner for Cinderella, somebody that she cares about and who is indeed worthy of her, and so we needed to know about his background too, in the same way as we find out about who Cinderella's parents are, the environment that has helped shape them. So we wanted to do that with the Prince, and they are there, and some of that experience really bonds them, because they begin to understand they share some of the same things. Some of those things are painful to experience as well, and it was beautifully acted by Rich and by Derek.
There's a gentleman here in the front row. There's a microphone coming around.
Hi, thank you for coming. Which one is your favorite Disney film?
Nice and simple, on the spot.
Aladdin.
Mine's Dumbo.
Jungle Book, I think.
Lion King.
You're allowed to say Cinderella. You can say Cinderella.
And Cinderella.
Anyone? Yes, please. The lady here in the front row as well, with the red top. Just throw the microphone down. It'll be fine.
Hi. So this was for Kenneth. Looking forward to your theatre season at the end of the year. Do you have any advice for theatre directing?
Theatre directing advice. Well, nothing other than just do it as much as you can, and if are you interested in theatre directing, or perhaps you are a theatre director?
I'm
trying to be. Well, often I think at the beginning of careers in the theatre and film and the whole world of show business, it's just good, however roughly or informally, to be doing it as much as you can, and that's not always easy, and sometimes it feels like it has to be very formal and grown up. I think any form in which you do it, whether it's working with an actor or working on scenes or recruiting friends to allow you to practice, is important. The doing it is important, and going to see it is important, and trying to recognize what the directing element of it is. So it's just trying to do it as much as you possibly can.
Yes, please. Thank you.
You've talked about how the Prince has a proper backstory, and what was it that made you decide to do this? And Richard, was it something that attracted you to the film?
Yeah, that's why I love this version of the film. In the original animation, he's only got 2 or 3 scenes, so we don't even get to learn his name in the animation. And in this version, you very much get a fleshed out character, and and someone who's an equal to Cinderella, that kind of slightly old-fashioned idea that, you know, damsel in distress needs man with big house and lots of money to rescue her from her terrible life, doesn't really work too much, and it's not relevant anymore. Actually, you meet these two as equals when the film starts, and that was really important in kind of making this story more relevant to today, I think.
And I think, you know, the fairy tales are such interesting things to work on because they are deceptively simple. I think people are very happy to watch them in a way in films because it feels as though, well, this will be fun, it'll be entertaining, be simple, perhaps. And then I think are regularly surprised by the fact that, you know, in some of the films we've just mentioned that Disney have done, you know, there have been always surprising and kind of insightful and often I think quite profound kind of perceptions about human behavior. And Cinderella has it in great measure as well. So you have this chance to deliver some fun if you can do so. But also I think there's just lots of observations about family life and what family life requires, what it's like for a stepmother these days, perhaps, and it takes it head on, you know, some interesting issues around bullying and cruelty that I think are, alas, universal.
And Holiday, in terms of backstory, I spoke to an actor recently who crafts backstory so meticulously he writes down his character's shopping list. Did you go into backstory for Anastasia, or?
Yeah. Sophie and I batted around loads of ideas, and I don't think we ever came to any clear conclusion, apart from the fact that it could be anything. We kept changing our mind, even as to kind of who was older and who was younger, and just we just kept bickering about it all the time, so gradually turning into the stepsisters. And we could never even settle on an age, actually. I think like the stepsisters kind of seem, in the way that this movie seems timeless, they kind of seem ageless. They sometimes, you think they may be in their early 20s, but there's something of the kind of selfish teenage girl about them, and something of that kind of that insular little toddlers, kind of the masters of their own world and can't quite empathise with anything outside of it. And I mean, even the way they dress is kind of like kids raiding their mum's dressing up box.
So you didn't keep the costumes, you kept the teeth, but not the costumes.
Oh, I'd have loved to have kept the costumes.
Okay. Time for two last questions. Yes, once again in the front row, and then we'll move back to the lady in the second row here.
My question's about the dress, because it's almost a character in the film, it seems, from the trailer. So how much input did you have? Was it important to you early on about how it was going to be made? And also, was it practical? Because, Richard, you had to dance with it, so...
It was not hugely practical. But, you know, we had a lot of time to practice with it, and it's such a stunning piece that Sandy Powell created. And actually, once you get used to it, you just get on with it. I learned a new way of dancing, which is like skiing, because you can't lift your feet, because you just stand in the dress, rip it, Sandy will go crazy, Lily will fall over. So you kind of ski around the dance floor, and it's, we go on with it. And it's such a stunning piece, and I'll never forget, you know, the image of kind of seeing Cinderella at the top of the stairs for the first time. It took everyone's breath away.
And it was obviously, and when people weren't asking about Gus Gus when I first mentioned it to them, they were asking about the dress. So I knew that there was a great anticipation for it. And then there was there were fundamental questions. Seem silly, but they're very important. What color is it? Is it in fact blue? What color shade of blue? Should it be like the blue of the 1950 animated one? Are we going to try and animate it? Are we going to sort of fiddle with it CGI-wise? But Sandy always felt that the dress, as you rightly say, is a sort of character, and so the material she chose, the kind of glitter that she chose to put into it, the jewels, the crystals that went into it, all contribute to the idea that you got a hint of in that scene, that quite apart from anything we would ever have done to it, it sort of moves in its own way, and as it came down the stairs, it was like a sort of cloud coming down the stairs. So it really had dynamic movement of a very magical kind that was based on all these acres and acres of material from all sorts of corners of the world. So it was like Project Dress completely dominated the entire pre-production, but it was crucial, and and so important emotionally as well as just as a sort of object of beauty.
And this may seem silly, but did Lily have special training how to move in the dress? Because
yeah, there were, I mean, for instance, there were I don't know, 3 or 4 different sets of heights of heels on the shoes so that she could manage the stairs, and there were different versions of the skirt that were so the skirt looked better at a certain height when she walked down the stairs, but not so good when she danced in it. So and it had issues on the day because changing that dress wasn't a matter of 5 minutes. That was 2 hours while that got. So you really had to work out, okay, well, if I shoot her at the top of the stairs, I'm okay, but if she goes down the stairs, she's got to go away for 2 hours. So now we're going to go and shoot a Holiday because she's on the other side of the room, and then we can do the shot down the stairs, and then we can change the dress again, and we can change the shoes again, and so there was quite a lot of logistical management of that kind of thing.
Amazing, amazing. And the last question is the lady here in the second row. Do you have the microphone? There you go. Thank you.
Hi, I was just wondering what your favorite quality of Cinderella as a person is.
Favorite quality? That she's not afraid to ask questions. I think that's something that I really like about her. She's not afraid to question something, and I think that's something the prince takes from her, is going, actually, yeah, let's question this and work out if it's right or wrong, and not be afraid to be wrong if it is.
And Holiday?
Her courage and her kindness.
Okay.
Yeah, that generosity. I was saying earlier on today that one of the nicest things that happened when we previewed the film to a family audience included a lot of kids, and they were asked afterwards, oh, who's your favorite character? Cinderella, 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 and what did you like about her? And they said, I liked the moment when the old lady came to visit her and needed some milk, and Cinderella was very upset, but she forgot about being upset and gave the old lady some milk without thinking about it. And that sort of observation of the casual generosity of Cinderella, always thinking about other people without being a sap, was I think is a lovely quality.
And a lovely note on which to end. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for your questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Kenneth Branagh, Holliday Grainger, Richard Madden, thank you. For Cinderella, I think they have an image in their heads already of what that is. How do you go about making it your own and turning it into a live-action movie and embellishing it?
Well, you start with the script, obviously, but alongside the script, you get this sort of anecdotal sense of what people might like from a Cinderella movie. One of the first things that people said to me when they knew I was doing it is Gus in? This is the question. People obsessed with Gus, and I realized after a while Gus had to be in. So then I went to Chris Weitz, who wrote the screenplay, and Gus was in. And in fact, there's a whole secret mice subplot in this. We wrote entire scenes for the mice. They're all scripted. They're voiced by actors, and then they're all scrunched up. So in the home entertainment release, maybe people can discover what the secret screenplay is. But it was all prepped. But it was really about trying to embrace the set pieces in the story that people, I think, really remember. I think people are very taken with the chase from the palace. They're very taken with the transformation scenes. The story, in a way, is about transformation in lots of ways. So I wanted to do all those cinematic moments that would see our mice transform to horses and pumpkins to coaches and things. But also at the center of it, see if we could just find a different kind of Cinderella, and also understand a bit more about who she was and how she could be in the 21st century, and how some of those other characters might flesh out a bit, like Kate Blanchett's stepmother. And so it was a combination of finding the spectacle and the things that people might want, and also the things that...
They're probably in my attic.
Okay.
I'll have to get them down. But yeah, with it was great working with Ken. Even in the audition, I felt like it was sort of like I felt like I was going for an acting workshop with Kenneth Branagh. People will pay for that. Because we kind of really played with the idea of sort of different levels of comedy with the sisters. I kind of at first thought I was going to go in and play some kind of stoic, bitchy Lady Mary-esque character, and then sometimes she's ended up just being a complete giggly little girl. But the whole rehearsal process was really useful, because we sat down, Ken and Sophie and I, and kind of just talked about the kind of the backstories and tried to find some sort of...
A new version of the story would demand.
and indeed Cinderella's stepsisters, which brings us to Holiday. Can you talk about your character and how you go about a modern interpretation of quote-unquote ugly sisters?
Well,
Not ugly.
Not ugly. Absolutely.
Horrendous.
Hence the quote-unquote.
Well, we were actually going to ugly them up slightly by, we were going to have fake teeth at some point, and we turned up not telling Ken that we were going to have them in at the camera test. I had these slightly goofy crossy over ones, and Sophie had a geeky gap in between hers. And after a sort of first 10 minutes of camera test, Ken was like, you know what, I don't think the teeth are necessary. And that was them done. But I did get to keep them, actually. So I do have these geeky fake teeth if ever they need to come unuseful.
Are they framed? Are they hanging on a wall? What are they doing? Please welcome Sir Kenneth Branagh, Richard Madden and Holliday Grainger.
Hi.
Well. Welcome.
A lovely crowd.
How are we all?
Very well, thank you. Very
Excellent.
well.
Congratulations, first of all, on the huge opening in the States.
Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Thank you.
70 million, roughly?
Yes, apparently. Yes.
Yeah, like you don't know the exact amount.
No, we won't be going in our pockets, but it's very, very, very nice. For me, the numbers just represent people going to see the movie, so that means lots of people. I don't know quite how many it equates to, but it feels like a lot of people, that would be.
Feels like a lot of people indeed. So whenever people hear the word